One of the things I'm curious about is your own process as a rational, skeptical, open-minded skeptic coming to the research and how you worked it all out yourself. Meaning, I think a lot of times we start with what? And then you went on some kind of journey personally to get to where you are now of being an advocate for the reality of a consciousness primacy in the
Mhm.
world versus a materialist viewpoint. But you had to take a journey
Mhm.
to get there. Tell us about your own process.
Yeah, and I think I'm still going through it, I mean, it was really hard to believe, that telepathy would be possible. I actually can't think of, like, anything more difficult to believe because we value our privacy and secrecy so much, and our individuality, thinking that we have our own little minds and our own little thoughts, and they're
I
all
knew
our
you were gonna say that. Yeah.
I mean, it's true, and, I think the first few times I saw it, I thought, "Okay, this might be just, like, a miraculous aberration, or there might be some explanation." And then where it started to become really confounding for me was that when I started learning, oh no, there's teachers going back decades that have been recording this and talking about it, and that there are parents all over the world, and then meeting people all over the world that had, you know, kept detailed journals and entries. And then I'd meet another family who's like, oh, well, there's been books written about this for decades. You look at this one, listen, this one, 80s, 90s, going back, 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 talking about telepathy and what parents were saying was a greater slate of even quote unquote spiritual gifts in non-speakers with autism. And to some degrees, many flavors of autism, but certainly those that feel less attached to their body with apraxia, this mind-body disconnect. And so then when I would start meeting families who didn't know each other, they were talking about the same struggles, right? Like when I'm doing homework, I really want to make sure they know the material and they're not taking it from my mind. So I have to clear my mind or be thinking of a song when they're doing the math. And I'm like, wow, but then you're hearing this from family after family after family. Um, so at a certain point, I think, and I'm like a big reader. I love science. I've always been, I think, like pretty nerdy. I prefer nonfiction films. Like it's always NPR, podcasts. Like, I'm just not a very sensationalist like person. It's always like really grounded. But I think when you're coming from that stature, if you start hearing something from hundreds of people all over the world throughout different decades, writing books, at a certain point, that's a legitimate way to start considering science, right? Like we didn't discover people, uh, had got cancer or radiation poisoning from us doing experiments where we put people in X-rays and tests. People started reporting problems, and we figured it out. So, so for me, then the challenge became, well, how do I get people to listen to this? Because I think they're telling the truth. These parents aren't on a mass conspiracy to trick the world into believing in telepathy. And then the next question was, and how? Like, what is happening exactly? And there were things that I would talk about with Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, other scientists. Like, is it possible that like there's quiet noises our eyes are making, or something in our cells that like they're picking up on, or could there be subtle cueing, or could there be this and that? And so then, we would try things just as play, like, okay, let's put a divider, let's put earphones in, let's do this, and see if individuals could still get the answers of what their parent or their teacher or whoever they're telepathic with is looking at. And they could. And so at a certain point, it just became undeniable. And then what happened to me next was a cognitive dissonance around, well, this appears to be true and I can't explain it, but it does appear to be true. So then what else have I dismissed all along that may be true as well? And can we approach those things thoughtfully from a really responsible, scientific, lots of corroboration type of way? And that became season 2, where we look at all sorts of stuff from mediumship to energy healing to the creative process to savantism, mind sight seeing through a blindfold, by talking to scientists and talking to people who've done it and talking to people who doubted it, and try to find the best cases of those who can talk about this thing around the world. And it's I think what I found through my own process, and I think what I have come to believe from the response to the telepathy tapes, is that for a long time, I think people have felt they had to fall into like these um, binary camps, right? Like you either don't believe in anything, or an atheist, everything's based on materialism. If you can't see it or measure it, it's not real. If you believe in God or this or that, you're, somehow less educated, you're less informed, you're more gullible. Or the other side is like, oh, well, they believe in fairies and Bigfoot and everything is, this like totally sensationalized extremist silliness. And I think most of us are somewhere in between where we're like, I am really rational and thoughtful, but I also do believe there could be a non-physical world. Can we figure this out together without mocking it? And somehow accidentally now that's what I'm doing.
One of the things I'm curious about is how you're standing up personally amidst the criticism and the mockery. And I say that because in preparing for this interview, I mentioned to some people, oh, I'm going to be talking to Kai Dickens, the creator of the Telepathy tapes. And I heard different things like, oh, come on, Tammy, haven't you heard that's been debunked or this or that? Or, they're moving the hands of the spellers, the person, Tammy, this is bullshit. Come on, wake up, girl. And my attitude actually is what you described as being someplace in the middle, meaning I have an intense curiosity. And I'm going to take this a little bit further because we're just getting to know each other. I have this sort of open porousness to a multidimensional way of seeing and being in the world. I'm not only feeling myself or even this conversation on one dimension. There's a lot going on. I can feel our listeners. What? How can you? I can sense them. I can sense a heart radiance, actually, in connection between you and I right here, just newly beginning, that sparking. So there's a lot of things happening in any given moment. And if somebody tried to reduce that into just physical, measurable actions, I would say, wow, you've now put me in a thimble. Screw you. But at the same time, as you said, it can get, into silly snake oil really quickly. So I guess my question is, though, how do you yourself stand in this without being like, oh my God, another person lobbed this like horrible critique at me that isn't even grounded?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be hard if I didn't think it was truthful, right? I mean, if you're exploring something that I think is like rooted in dishonesty and trickery, it'd be pretty hard to sleep at night, you know. But if you think that you're just caring or giving the truth of truly thousands of people who have experienced something that you've seen with your own eyes, and there isn't trickery and there isn't anything like that, um, then it just becomes a case of this is hard for people to accept. People like their privacy. People like the paradigm in which they were raised that makes them feel safe. And anytime you bring forth a new idea, even though this isn't new, an idea that might feel out of the norm, and it can bring forth ridicule. But, that's not how the world changed. It's not how we progressed as humans. If no one had left the coast of England to explore because they thought the world was flat, we'd be pretty uninformed human beings. If we, when people, there's a whole slew of scientists throughout the course of history who've been dismissed or mocked or ridiculed for saying something that turned out to be true that at the time society wasn't ready to handle. And it's okay. I'm okay getting that pushback. And I think some of, even just some of the responses you even just said right there are clearly people who haven't listened to the podcast, to know what's really happening, because many of these individuals are spelling without being touched. Their hands, certainly no one we've interviewed has their hands touched. That's just not even a thing. So I think some of it is coming from people who just want to, jump on something, but they don't even know about it. And I think people who are in the world, who've listened, who've done the time to listen and do their homework, it becomes pretty hard to dismiss.
Now, you mentioned that when you discovered that, yes, there is truth in telepathic communication happening for non-speaking people, that it made you question other ideas that perhaps previously in your life you had not really considered? What
Mhm.
what are the things that you now feel open to that 5 years ago you would have been like, "No way, that's just outside the
Mhm.
known for me."
Like, even now, I would never walk into, like, a mall psychic or medium or something. I think, like, that's probably mostly just snake oil, fraud, fake, but I have found there are real, you know, mediums, from researching this and meeting the people who test them and who put them through not just double or but triple blind tests and all sorts of stuff like that. So I think that's something where I don't have any doubt now that that's real. Um,
So in
and
that, you're talking about mediumship, you're talking about people who are able to contact individuals who have passed, who are not
Mhm.
incarnate, but there's a soul consciousness that they
Yeah.
are bringing through.
And what that is, like, I mean, that's one of the things that we questions we asked in season 2. Like, is it that they're truly talking with someone's, like, soul or someone who's actually passed on? Or is it, like, downloading information from a greater informational field? Kind of like the edge of a black hole that anything that goes inside of it, all information is kept on the edge. Like, is that kind of our reality too? And all information's out there? Like, those are questions we don't try to answer. We can't answer yet, but it's something that we explore. I think another thing was energy healing. That was something where, you know, it just felt like hopeful, and maybe this is just a placebo effect. We did a deep dive over 2 episodes into energy healing and covered a team of scientists that were on the front lines of reducing the growth of pancreatic cancer cells in a petri dish, but through energy healing. And people, some again cutting edge experiments with Reiki of people having 30% reduction when they're having Reiki being done, and they had a fakey group too, fake Reiki people who weren't practicing and didn't have an intention for healing, didn't do any of this stuff, and Reiki was much more powerful than fakey, um, and the placebo. So we kind of do a deep dive into a lot of this stuff. Animal communication, again, like I would have laughed at the thought of someone communicating with animals, and again, I think there's a lot of people who maybe make money off of stuff that aren't the real deal. Like, I have 3 people on my staff now, and we're constantly sorting through emails and trying to discern, is this person the real one or the fake one? Are they authentic? Are they not? What's their agenda? Doing a bunch of research, like really trying to figure out and triangulate who we will talk to, and making double, triple, quadruple sure we're not putting anything into the world that could be, you know, fake. But as far as the animal communicators, like the people we've talked to have worked with governments around the world, have worked with huge, Greenpeace or, you know, uh, navies, things like that to try to help with, animal life or migration routes and all sorts of stuff. So um, there's a lot that I think that people on the front lines of law enforcement, military, information, big technology are leaning on that isn't physical. And that was a big shock to me is, wow, often they can't explain it and they don't know how it works maybe, or maybe they do and I just don't know. But they're using it, they're utilizing it as a tool. And that was also shocking to me. Remote viewing for one, things like that.
Discover on-demand videos and docuseries, explore a full schedule of daily life classes, and become part of an incredible community. At Sounds True One, we invite you inward to find your way, your way.